Hello and welcome to the Gallant Few's 10 Questions, a show where we bring a different guest on each time to answer the set 10 questions on their time following Rangers. My name's Colin McDuff and I'm delighted to be joined this week by none other than Davie Pollock. Davie, how are you, mate?
I'm smashing, Colin, and delighted to be on. Hopefully share some of my nonsense with you. And we'll just rattle through them. Obviously, I've had a wee think about coming up with something which the chaps listening can relate to. So, ready when you are.
No, I've been really looking forward to this. Just for a bit of background for the listeners, when me and Davie first started speaking about getting them onto the pod, we asked for his number, he gave him a quick chat, gave him a quick phone to chat through for the pod for 5 minutes as maybe, and then we got talking, and 55 minutes later I was still there listening to some of the brilliant stories he's got. So Davie, hope I've not built you up too much, but I've been looking forward to this. I knew for that day this guy's got a tale or two about following Rangers.
Yeah, I don't adjust. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm obviously, my name's David Pollock. I was born in Cookadens in Glasgow, so born in the tenement, and I'm one of 6, and 5 of us were born in the house. So that's just the way things were done then. It's only my youngest sister who's actually got to one of those things which they later built hospitals, I think they're called. So I was only there till I was about 3 or 4, and it was at that time, not too far from Firhill actually. We stayed in Cookadens, but obviously our heart lay elsewhere. When we were younger, my mum and dad had actually arranged to move to Australia, and we were within days of going to the Broomielaw to get on the boat. It was that close, but my mum just at the last minute just kind of took cold feet and says no. She wouldn't leave her mum, who kind of stayed round the corner from us in Cookadens. So we ended up, and bizarrely, my brother had a wee look on the interweb, and we can now actually have a look at the house in Chulara in West Sydney, where we were moving to. So we actually had a house to go to. Wow. So I've now had a look at the house, which, it's the original sliding doors moment, because we were only 2 days away from leaving, but my mum was never one to take the easy option, so we moved to Easter House instead. Which was
Sydney to Easter House. That's a come down and a half, isn't it?
That was not the easy option, as I said. Yeah. My mum was some character. She had kind of a large. I bear the stamp of her, in several ways. But just to give you a wee kind of indication of what my mum was like. In days gone by, when you went to a dinner dance, she was off to one, and I think it was something to do with the local street football team, because Easter House was big in that, with lots of football clubs. So it was some fundraising event. So her and my dad trotted off in their finery. So they got there, and obviously there was an obligatory raffle, and so she won the raffle, and the prize in the raffle was a ball signed by all the Celtic players. So it quite quickly became apparent, to the people who had held the raffle, that she wasn't of that persuasion. So they then offered her, said, would you like to exchange the ball, for an alcoholic drink, a bottle or something? She says, oh, no. It's just give me the ball. I'll take that home and my boys will kick fuck out of it. So that's pretty much where it comes from, So yeah, and she was. I remember one time it was 1971. It was the Scottish Cup semi-final. We were obviously very young, pestering the life out of her. We want to go to the football. And this pretty much kind of sums up all our holidays when it was done. With 10 minutes notice, right? So she says, "Oh, right, enough. Let's go." And she took us over to Hampden for the 1971 Scottish Cup semi-final with Rangers and Hibs. And she'd never been in a football ground in her life, and me and my 2 brothers, she took us over. It was a 1-1 draw. Colin Steen scored. We actually lost the replay, I was sorry to say. And so it was 1970. Yeah, it was 71 Scottish Cup final, and the Hibs get pumped 6-1 with that other mob, in the final. But the kind of early doors. So give you a wee flavour of the household I came from. So can I on to number one? Really, it's
so. Just before I ask you these questions, so we've got the kind of background of you, the stock you come from. The 10 questions we're going to go into, they're purposely left vague. It can be your own interpretation. How much? Just was it a struggle to get one answer down for everyone? Was it all for every question? Was it a clear-cut winner?
No, some of them were agonising, and to be honest, I've got, I think, one option. I've got the best of 3, and you could probably put them in any order you like. So no, I've seen Rangers lots of times. So best Rangers goal, gosh, I mean, I could spend an hour on that one.
So that is question number 1. So your favourite Rangers goal. And as I said, we've left these vague, so this can be the best technical goal you've seen, or your favourite goal that meant so much to the fans, or just in the context of what was happening. So what have you got for your favourite Rangers goal?
Well, I've got a couple of options. No, I've actually got 3 options, as you said, but the most technically brilliant was the 4th of August 1979 in Cooperman in the Driver Cup final. So I was in the Rangers end. Obviously, we were a wee bit away from, because it was scored at the other end of the ground. But Sandy Jardine scored a brilliant goal that day as well. I mean, but Cooperman's goal was super special. When he just kept lobbing it over their heads. Next one, next. They seem to be queuing up. They seem to be in it. And then he flicks it past the keeper. It was absolutely superb. Cooperman was obviously unplayable at one days, but that goal is etched in my heart. I mean, that game is etched in my heart. I can remember that game vividly, just because it was an absolute beautiful sunny day. We're all at Hampden. Sandy Jardine scored a worldly. I think it was wee Polaris who scored the first goal, John McDonald, which was also a good goal. And I think they scored one, and it was possibly Bobby Lennox who scored. Maybe it wasn't, but they scored. But Rangers pulverised them that day, because that was the same year as they had beaten us 4-2 at Parkhead and they won the league when Johnny Doyle got sent off. I was at that game as well. Thankfully, it was never televised. But that was a sore one to take. And I think I've heard a couple of the Rangers players saying it was the pain of that game that took them into the Driver Cup final to get their own back and exact some revenge on them, and they did, because it was 3-1 that day, but really it could have been 5-6. Rangers absolutely put them to the sword that day. It was fantastic. But the game itself, I've seen was played that mob a few times, but the game is etched in my mind, but just because of that Cooper goal, just because it was so special. He gets the ball, he's back to them, and then just does a wee dance round them. Next, please, flick, goal. We had a good day that day. I was a teenager at that point. But
am I right in saying you started your apprenticeship the next day?
2 days later, I started my apprenticeship on the 6th of August, which was the Monday, and we were at the game on the 4th. So yeah, 2 days after that. So that was
a happy bear that day.
Well, we quite quickly find out who was who when I arrived, because Wimpy had 10 apprentices, and I think that during the conversation of that morning, we don't know who's who. We get the game on Saturday, and I said to this guy, "Yeah, I was at the good end," and he's saying, "What end was that?" He says, "The Rangers end." So, and he was of the other persuasion, so we were never drinking partners. So the other one I had was Pistol Pete. In the 2002 Scottish Cup final, because we were right at the corner that he ran to after he'd scored the goal, which was that was a cracking day and all. Those Union flags. We had a wonderful day that day, which lasted to the wee small hours. I remember, which was we ended up back in Duke Street and in the Bristol. We were straw hats and trumpets. But the end of the game, obviously, because I think Barry Ferguson possibly played one of his finest games for Rangers that day. Barry was the leader, and he came running to the touchline we were at as well when he'd taken his shirt off and after he pinged in the free kick. So that was a special goal. And when obviously we'd left at Pistol, when Lovenkrands scored right at the end, By the time, we'd got up and dusted ourselves down and straightened our ties, when we turned around, the Celtic end was empty. It was gone. I don't know how they managed it. But that was what a day. What a day.
Watched that game in telly, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal game, and Barry Ferguson was unplayable that day, but what a goal it was for Lovencrantz, the one you're talking about. If I had to really push you, Davie, what goal
I've actually got a third goal, because this one's also super special for us, because it was in Copenhagen, which has just been mentioned. When we went over, when Rangers played FC Copenhagen in the Champions League, and it was the qualifier for the group section, and Shota, the ball drops over his shoulder and he hooks it into the net. We were behind the goal in the Parken Stadium, so we'd done the day trip over for that game, and obviously Copenhagen's not the cheapest place, so we're off to the supermarket, get lots of beers, and we were tanking into it. We eventually got into the ground, plenty of time. Game, and Rangers score. Arteta scored the first one with a penalty. They then equalised, but Rangers played well that night. We actually deserved to go through. It wasn't a fluke. So Arveladze pops it in, 83rd minute, 7 minutes. We're hanging on. It seemed like 27 minutes for the end of it. But during that game at half time, one of the guys we were with, because we'd carrying our stuff with us, he had a rucksack. And then we discovered at half time that we'd 4 cans of beer in the rucksack, so we managed to, completely unwittingly we'd taken it in, but you would have thought we'd found £1,000 because we'd found 4 cans of beer in the bag for half time. It was, but that was good. I thoroughly enjoyed. If you were to put thumb screws on me, then I would probably say my favourite goal would have to be Cooperman's, Drybrook Cup final, because we'll never see the likes of that again, but that was... best Rangers goal, but there's so many to choose from. So many.
It's a very hard opening question with the amount of important goals and beautiful, technically brilliant goals that we've seen over since since the games started. But since the games were televised, God knows how many we've missed in the days of Bill Struth and before that we've not had the pleasure of seeing. But so we'll put it down for David Cooper at Hampden in the Drybrook Cup final as your favourite goal. So question number 2, here's to the weird and wonderful. Where's the strangest place you found yourself watching a Rangers game?
In America. My girl was staying over in Los Angeles, so I took a wee trip out to see her. And obviously the first thing you do is going anywhere, bluenosebars.com, was because I had a ticket for the cup semi-final, the League Cup semi-final against Aberdeen, which I then gave to my brother. So I went over to see Fiona. She was staying in LA at the time. So once we tracked down the LA True Blues, we found out they were all getting together in the Fox and Hounds pub, which was in the Studio City of Los Angeles. Kind of bizarre town, Los Angeles, but so we had to get our arse over there. She's Rangers. It's like, we need to go watch Rangers. So you had to drive us through to the Fox and Hounds. 9 o'clock in the morning kickoff. So we got there about 8:30. And then, the bazaar, we're finding a wee space to park the car, and guys in the street walking past us with Rangers strips on. So that was a wee bit surreal. It was good. They were a smashing bunch of guys, but that was obviously the result was a bit shit. As Ferguson popped one in just at the death to beat us 1-0. Man, that was. But the day wasn't a total disaster, because in the afternoon, we then took ourselves along to watch LA Galaxy play Houston Dynamo. So I'd bought the tickets at this end, and she just had them sent to her. So we went along for that, which was good. I got a wee surprise, when the Houston Dynamo team came out. They were led out by their skipper, who is one DeMarcus Beasley.
Wow!
So it was a wee Rangers connection immediately. So he absolutely strolled it. Big Zlatan was playing with LA Galaxy, as was Ashley Cole. They were 2-0 up at half time and ended up getting cuffed 3-2. So it was very much a mixture of players, between Abramovich and some other, Ashley Cole and DeMarcus Beasley, kind of good quality professionals, but some of the players in the park would have been the championship players in Scotland, to be honest. So, but it was a cracking day out, and it was just good to see, the different experiences of the game. But obviously in the stadium with the Rangers strip on right enough, so.
Lucky man, that was a tough game, Aberdeen. So I had to have the long walk back to the pub, and it was freezing that night. I waited down my sorrows, and there you sunning yourself watching Zlatan Ibrahimovic start his stuff.
Yeah, we were sitting in the sun. We were sitting in the sun ordering some just nachos. The food in the stadium in Los Angeles was unbelievable, because they ordered most things. It was a la carte. What a layout. Obviously, they've got the weather for it because it just never rains in Los Angeles. In fact, when my girl, she had moved over there in the May, and when it was obviously late October when we saw the game, and it had only rained one time. One day it rained, and the whole time she was in Los Angeles. So that's the kind of, I mean, since, I was singing the song, the Broadway lights so clear. If they only had the Rangers over here, so I was singing that too. And I had a Rangers T-shirt, which I got when I signed up to the Rangers Lotto, and it was made in Glasgow since 1872. And a boy stopped me on we went to Santa Monica, and a boy stopped me on the pier. He said, I'm loving your T-shirt, mate. So thanks. So it is indeed a small world.
Did he know it was a Rangers top, or did he think you were born in 1872? He might have been high as a kite in LA.
I think it was that he thought I was born in 1872. I did see Rangers at the bottom of it quick, but yeah.
There we go.
It said made in Glasgow on the T-shirt, which was not a lie, because I was made in T-shirt. Made in Glasgow. In 1963, right now.
Really shows you it is such a small world. We've got bears dotted all over the globe. I was actually saying to Chris before a pod a few weeks ago that I think it was either Chris or Mason I was chatting to, that our second highest listens for the podcast is in Sweden. It's the UK, then Sweden, America. Fuck knows why we've got such a big Swedish fan base. Shout out if you're listening in Sweden, but it just goes to show, like, all over the globe, man. It's heartwarming to see. Right.
Well, I'll be expecting a few calls for translation purposes. Say, what the hell what was he talking about?
So
I'll have to speak a little slower for the Swedish people.
On to question number 3. What's your best away day or away trip following Rangers been?
Obviously, lots of candidates for this particular option. And again, I've put down a couple. I've put down 3 now. Because one of them was Katowice, which I think I spoke to you about before, when we went to Auschwitz and hired the taxi driver. So, but for the Swedish listeners, I'll tell you the story again. So we went on the bus, and we left on the Sunday night, and it was I think it was Big Stuart's bus. Big Stuart was on the bus anyway. Stuart Daniels, the Rangers community will know who he is. So we left. We got there. We changed £20 sterling into 20,000 zlotys, so we were immediately millionaires. And so we thought because the Auschwitz camp wasn't too far away, and it was a lovely sunny day, quite cold, but it was very bright. So we hired the taxi driver between 4 of us, took us over to Auschwitz for a wee tour of the camp. Said to the taxi driver, right, stay here, we'll see you, and when we get out, it'll be, we don't know how long the tour will take. So we did the tour. We obviously there's the layout of it's Auschwitz-Birkenau. So the main camp is Auschwitz, which was kind of the admin centre, and Mengele did all those nasty things. And then there was Birkenau, where the big railway lines run into all those sheds. And the place is absolutely horrific. Just on a serious note for a moment, it is absolutely jaw-dropping that what happened there, in an industrial scale. So anyway, we went on the tour, and the chap took us all around the place, and just horror story after horror story, mountains of shoes and suitcases and glasses and human hair, and bloody hell, it's absolutely catastrophic. And one of the blocks in the Auschwitz was the punishment block. So there was a few cells where the particularly nasty people get locked away. And in the cell there was the wee shrine, which was lit up with a whole lot of Virgin Mary pictures and candles and various, iconography of the Catholic Church. And the host, the guy who's taken the tours, tells us that the candle which is in this cell was lit by the Pope. And he then explains to us that the Pope is very popular in Poland. So there was obviously the solemn silence at that point. Then one of the guys who was on the tour with us says, he's not very popular on Lack Hall. And so we then burst out laughing. And the chappie who was taking the tour was less than pleased. Tour is over. And then just marched away from us. That was it. He never spoke to us again. So obviously he didn't quite get the Lark Hall connection, but
It's like, that's like some a still game clip, that point where somebody says something and the absolute worst time you can break a giggle. And I can only imagine the more you try and hold that in, the worse it gets.
Yeah, it was surreal, obviously, because you're not expecting someone to crack a gag at that point, which only made it funnier, to be honest. But when we laughed, the guy was not pleased. So we left, and our taxi driver, amazingly, was still outside. He had waited the 3 hours that it took us to get around the camp, and he was still outside. And because we're thinking, there's no way in God's earth that chap's going to be there. But God bless him, he was. So we gave him another $4, and he took us back to Katowice, back to our hotel, where we had in the restaurant with and on the other table were the Italian referee and the 2 linesmen, and we sent them over some champagne. And but the champagne came with a plastic cork, which so we're not really sure it was proper champagne, but it was all there was. But we the F2 lines over there, honestly, not a word of English between them, but we were trying to bribe them with our load of zlotys. As it turns out, Rangers won 4-2 anyway. So we went to the stadium, which was a huge big bowl. A typical kind of Eastern European ground. It was probably capable of holding almost 100,000. But so it wasn't Katowice's ground we played the game in, because their ground was so small. So, but it was in Katowice, but it was a far larger ground than their home ground. But there were a whole lot of Gornik fans that came to the game, and so they were behind one goal. We were kind of on the halfway line. And behind us were the Rangers entourage, David Holmes. We were chatting to David Holmes outside the ground, got our photograph taking him and things. So during the game, the Gornik fans are all singing at one end, the Katowice fans are at the other, and we're in the halfway line. There wasn't many of us. There was less than 100 Rangers fans in the stadium. But all the Gornik fans at one point stood up and then started walking round towards us. So David Holmes, who was behind us, comes running down to speak to Big Stuart Daniels. He says, Stuart, what's happening? He says, oh, it's okay, they're coming to join us. So the Gornik fans come round and joined the Rangers fans, and then started chanting, Glasgow Rangers. So they just joined in with us against the Katowice mob. So it was surreal. So we never get back until the Friday night. I mean, absolutely needing a blood transfusion by the time we get back from there. It was a long haul to Poland on a bus.
I can only imagine.
The next one I've got is the trip to Parma, which was when we actually lost 1-0 and Sherboni was in goals, but we'd won the first leg 2-0. And we were trying to get flights, we were trying to get booked on a bus, and we eventually couldn't manage either. So I'd phoned Ibrox and says, do you have tickets for the away game? He says, yeah, come over and get a couple. So me and Sharon went with a couple of tickets. Could not get a flight anywhere. So the game was on the Wednesday. This was the weekend. And he says, do you know what? To hell with this. We'll just drive it.
No danger.
So on Sunday, we just threw the sleep bags in the car and off we went. So my sister stays in Gravesend in Kent. So we drove down to her. We stayed there overnight. Then it was a trip down to Dover. And then it was, we 10 minutes preparation for this. This was a completely off-the-cuff decision to just drive it. So, and I never actually realised until someone told me later that you have to adjust your headlights to drive on the continent. There was none of that. They didn't even check the insurance. Just get in the car, let's go. So onto the boat, across through France, stopped at Reims, bought cases and cases of beer in the boot. Drove through there, through Germany, into Switzerland. Had to buy a year's road tax in Switzerland at the border between Germany and Switzerland. And then drove through the Gotthard Tunnel, 22 kilometres long, which is like a game of Space Invaders. It just, disappears to nothing, to absolutely boiling hot. So we just got to the north of Italy, crashed in the car, and then we drove down to Parma on the Tuesday morning. So we arrived in Parma quite early on the Tuesday. So we got there intact, then had to find a hotel. We met the boys from the Burnbank bus, which we tried to get on. But we stayed in a nice wee hotel in Parma. We met Gianluigi Buffon in the restaurant the night before the game. So he was, it was just a small place. I mean, probably the size of my living room. And he was in there. So, but obviously the conversation was fairly stunted because it was more about Parma, Rangers, and I think that was the only two words that both of us understood. Yeah. So that was fantastic. Obviously, we got the result because we lost 1-0. But we'd won through, and that was us through the group stage in the Champions League. So we had that was much whooping and a whopping that night, and all the way home. It was a long haul home, right enough. So, but that was just in the cuff because we just couldn't get a flight. So just what the hell, we'll just drive it, and we did.
Talk about that last minute holiday, man. That's something else.
I think that, as I said, I think that's what I got from my mum because that's the way our holidays went when we were wee. It was 10 minutes notice to go and get your swimming trunks, and then we were off to Rothsay or we were off to St Andrews or something. That's the way we did holidays. The other one I've got says Monaco when we went down there for that in the Champions League game. Obviously we pumped Sturm Graz in the first match, and we booked flights to, it was kind of Ryanair. I think it was a drive to Stansted and then Stansted to Genoa, and then just hired a car at Genoa. Just inside the Italian border. So we just hired a car. It was a wee pishy Fiat thing. So we drove down, didn't have tickets for the game. So we had to go to Monaco first of all, which was utterly bizarre. What a place Monaco is. So I'm driving about, the place is full of Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and I'm driving a Fiat, bloody God knows what. And so, just talk about sticking out. So we eventually, after a wee tour, we found the stadium because the stadium in Monaco is not dead obvious. I actually drove around it twice before, and then stopped someone and says, "Excuse me, where's the football ground?" And they literally pointed across the road and said, "There, it's there." I was about 30 yards from it and didn't recognise it as a football stadium because it's kind of on the first floor. The pitch is kind of up a level. So anyway, went in, got the tickets. We now need somewhere to stay. And then it was back in the car. Well, we obviously can't stay in Monaco because it's for squillionaires. So we just drove to Nice. And just got ourselves hooked up with a wee hotel. We just got to the tourist office. They says, go to this place. And we went to the hotel, checked in, bags down, Ranger strip on, out for something to eat and a drink. So walking down the street in Monaco, and it was a kind of precinct area. And this guy stands up in one of the cafes and shouts, "Davie!" I says, "Michael." So what was a guy I was at university with? And because I'd done my apprenticeship, then done some hires, then went to university, so I kind of did things in reverse almost. But Michael, who I was at uni with, he says, "I thought you might be here." So I says, what are you doing here? He says, "I work here, I live here." I says, "You're joking me." He says, "Where are you staying?" I says, "We're in some hotel down the road." He says, "Just go back and get your stuff and just come and stay with me." So he says, "I'll have to." He was at work. He'd meeting some guy from work. So he says, "Come back in an hour." He says, "And you go get your stuff, and we'll head back to my flat." So that's exactly what we did. He then had a flat in the Promenade d'Anglais. The big sweeping road where recently that guy drove a truck through all the crowds and on the Bastille Day, right on the
I thought I recognised that, and I thought I was just my ears were perking up because it sounds really fancy.
No, it's the Promenade d'Anglais. It's the big road which is in the bay at Nice, which is all the way around. Yeah. He had a flat facing that beach, so we ended up camping at his place, which you could have played tennis in his living room. It was an absolutely beautiful place. So we get up the following morning. He says, I'm going to have to go to work. He says, "But I'll come home early. I'll go to the game with you." I says, smashing, Michael, excellent. So he says, "There's plenty of beer in the fridge. Just do what you do." So we did, and we and when the Rangers fans are passing along the street, singing like maddies, and I'm hanging out the window screaming, you're doing, lads? And they couldn't quite believe it, I'm hanging out the window with a Rangers strip on. So anyway, that afternoon, Michael got us back about 3 o'clock. He then gets on the phone call, speaking, fluent French to whoever, right? He says, right, come on, we need to go to the game. So we went down, jumped in his car, and he drove us round to Nice Airport. And I said, Michael, what are we doing? He says, we're getting a helicopter. So we just jumped in the helicopter at Nice Airport and then flew around to Monaco, which is only 15 miles, something like that. So we obviously were in the helicopter 5 minutes. But when we arrived at the helipad in Monaco, when we get out and we're jumping at the helicopter with Ranger strips on, and about 100 yards away are all the French riot police who are obviously, about maybe 300, 400 yards for the stadium, and they're watching us, climb out helicopters with Ranger strips on. They're thinking, right, this is a wee bit more serious than we thought. So it was just a walk round to the stadium, 5 minutes into the pub, had a few beers, and then 1-0 victory. Who pops up with the winner? Gio Van Bronckhorst. So it was a good night. Straw hats and trumpets. It was the train back to. We never get the helicopter back. We get the train back to Nice.
Had to slam it on the train, eh?
I know that's how the other half live. Oh no, but Monaco is just. I actually, in my wee tour of Monaco, we were at See the Bay where all those big yachts are, and it's just completely mental. And so I'm driving down, and just as I realise I'm driving the wrong way, a guy chapped the window, and I rolled the window down. He was English, and he says, "You understand? You're going the wrong way in a one-way street here." He says, "Mate, it's just dawned on me." He says, "But if you just go along, maybe 50 yards, you'll be able to turn round." So I did. So I got to get nicked in Monaco. In fact, on the other thing was, and see the trip to Parma, I actually managed to get onto the Autostrada in Italy without acquiring a ticket for the toll road. So when I got to the toll at the other end, I got fined, and I had to go to the kind of Carabinieri office, which was the local town, but obviously it chucked at the window. So I'm probably a wanted man in Italy. if I ever get back, they'll clap me in irons. So because I still owe them something like bloody 2,000 lira or something.
Well, with the interest now, that'll be a pretty fine if you ever roll back. So, if I have to push you to pick one, what one would you choose as your best away trip, Davie? I
think it would have to be Monaco, just because it was completely surreal. See, when we get back to the Genoa, after the day after the game, and we get back in the car, see you later, Michael. We actually went back to see him about 6 months later, and we took him some buckfast and things like that. So, because he was still in Monaco, he's driving an Audi TT. I said that to him. I says, Michael, how come you're staying in Monaco in the Promenade d'Anglais with a view of the beach, driving an Audi TT, and I'm in Stonyburn, with a lovely view with a shale bing, driving a clap to bloody 10-year-old Golf. What happened there?
Aye. So, how the other half live, eh?
It would have to be Monaco, because that was just nuts. And as I said, sorry, I was saying, when we get back to the airport and we beat Sturm Graz 5-0 in the first game, we've now got to the second game, so we've got 6 points out of 6, and we're thinking the final's in Milan. It's not too far away from here. We could just fly back to Genoa for the final. So we were making arrangements for the final after we'd played the second game. Talking about getting ahead of yourselves. Jesus.
I know. So on to question number 4, mate, and I'm going to put the pressure on you. From here on in, I'm going to need one answer from you. And unless this will end up being a 4-parter, this podcast. So question number 4, what's the funniest thing you've ever seen at a Rangers game?
Well, this one was it was funny, but it's surreal, bordering on surreal. And we're not going back too far. 2013, you possibly at the game yourself, when we were at Ibrox against Brecon, during those years. And at half time, and I could not believe this, my jaw was on the floor, when out marched the Mongolian Army brass band.
I remember that.
With dancers. And I could not believe it. So absolutely, this is a wind-up. I'm waiting on Jeremy Beadle turning up, because this is just, and then see when they started playing I'm getting married in the morning. The Mongolian Army, how that was a bit left field to start with. But then they had dancers on in the centre spot, and then they started doing that kind of choreographed kind of walking about thing. And I'm like, Jesus, Charles Green, he's on drugs. I thought that was completely mental. Just
when you were telling that story there, I've managed to find a picture on Google, and every post on Twitter and Instagram of a new show will always have an accompanying picture, and I think this has to go on I think this has to go on with it. I completely forgot that. I think there's so many things in those years that I've just tried to erase from my mind, and it's like brand new information again when I hear it. But I've not thought about that in a long time, Davie.
The Mongolian Army bloody brass band. I'm like, what? With dancers. I'm getting married in the morning. I'm like, this is mental, man. So that was funny. That was listen. There's another cracking story when here very quick one. Right, I'll make this one absolutely 1 minute long. When I was over in the game when we played Bohemians in Dublin, which is the only time I've ever been to a game of football and been genuinely scared that I'm not going to get out of here because it was absolutely nuts. But see, before the game, we were in a kind of the Garda kind of retreated, and we were in a no man's land, and there was a guy. We went to the chippy, and there was a guy at the door of the chippy, and he was saying the staff behind the counter were Italian, and he's screaming at them, "Serve chips, serve them chips!" And so everybody, all the Rangers fans are queuing quite orderly, getting chips and fish and all that. And then every time they handed over the chips, don't fucking pay them. Don't fucking. So there was no money was changing hands, and the big man was making sure that everyone was getting served and not handing them any money. And he just stood there and all the way down the queue, all the way back up to the counter to get served. Right, yeah, I'll have fish and chips, served it up. Don't fucking pay them, right? Next, you get in there. So he'd taken upon himself. So we were all getting free fish and chips. But in they were actually terrified to this big guy at the door who was telling them, don't give them any money. So they never got any money.
Oh, dear. So
the funniest things, those Mongolian Army. I mean, Jesus.
It'll be hard to top that. It really will be hard to top that one. On to question number 5, Davie. Who's the one Rangers player that you didn't rate but everybody else seemed to love?
Right, I'm going to fall out with some people here, I suspect, but I'm prepared to go with it. The name I've come up with after, kind of, wasn't a lengthy list, but there were some candidates, but it's Ray Butch Wilkins. So,
wow,
I just MBE indeed, so the crab. And I know he scored the goal against Celtic, but it was one of only 2 goals he ever scored for Rangers in 70 appearances. So, I mean, in all of that, he was obviously a smashing bloke. You can just hear what people will say about him, that he was. But in terms of his contribution to Rangers, I know everybody kind of wets their knickers. He was a smashing guy, but his contribution to Rangers, I would say, done. I mean, the list of clubs Ray Wilkins went through is rather lengthy. He actually played quite a lot after he'd left Rangers. And they then made a comment, I didn't actually, I wish I'd come to Rangers earlier. So when you look at his career, at Chelsea, then Manchester United, he was over at Sampdoria and AC Milan. And I think he only ever scored 48 goals. And I think he scored 30 of them for Chelsea. So, I mean, for the rest of the clubs that he played for, he only scored 270 for Rangers, and it kind of fell away from that. And when the time he got to QPR, he had another 2 stints at QPR. So 84 appearances for England, 3 goals. Sorry.
There's no doubt about his talent throughout his career, but I suppose probably your argument as a Rangers player, his Rangers career is probably he's not quite the legendary status.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know he's acquired a status which I don't think his performances and his contribution kind of merits it, to be honest. So, just my minute. It had to be someone, and it's Butch Wilkins.
Oh, I can't wait to see the comments and follow about that question. Yeah. On the other side, then, Davie, question number 6. Your chance to present the Sasa Papatch Award. So who's your Rangers unsung hero? And it can't be Papatch himself.
It's not Sasha. What a man he was. Yeah, he's the Mr. 7 out of 10. So, probably get slaughtered for this one too, but hey ho. Alexei Mikhailichenko.
Oh, he could have given me 100 guesses and I wouldn't have guessed him.
110 appearances, 20 goals. He won the league in every season he was with Rangers, 5. 1 Scottish Cup, 2 League Cups. He was a league winner in the USSR, Italy, Scotland and the Ukraine. European Cup Winners' Cup with Moscow Dynamo, 1986. Beaten finalist in the Euros in 1988. He was 4th in the Ballon d'Or in 1988. He was, you watch the YouTube footage. The guy was, he was special. I mean, he looked a wee bit ungainly. You know, there was a wee touch of the Ted McMinn about him, but he was technically a superb player, and his track record by Rangers. You know, so 20 goals and 110 appearances, so 1 in 5, which is 5 league winners' medals.
So when we talk about unsung hero at the time, do you think he was an unsung hero at the time, or do you think he doesn't get the recognition he deserves when we look back, or is it a bit of both?
Well, if you just compare him with the stature with which Butch Wilkins is held in, Rangers, Alexei Mikhailichenko won the league every year he was here, every year. So we never, and his track record, and the ability of the guy, for me, 20 goals. You should go through YouTube, watch his goals, top drawer. So we don't really much hear about. I think he's now the technical director at Dynamo Kiev. So he's back there. He's still involved in football. He's still with Dynamo Kiev. So Alexei, apparently, who was telling me this? I heard the story about his wee post-match routine was to get changed, get Lever Ibrox, and he stopped in some chippy in the West End. He would then load himself up with a whole lot of chips and fish, and then go across the road to the off-sales, buy a bottle of vodka, and that was him camping the house for the night. He was a creature of habit.
You don't get footballers like that anymore, do you? Maybe Carlos Pena, but there's a reason why he's not at the top level.
Yeah. No, but Alexei Mikhailichenko, I loved Alexei. He was a smashing player.
There we go. So Mikhailichenko for the Sasa Papatch Award, Davie's unsung Rangers hero. So on to question number 7 then, mate. We've tried to keep it as light-hearted as possible, but what's this one? We'll take it down. What's your biggest Rangers regret?
Oh, this one isn't very light-hearted. I'm going to have to turn it down a couple of notches here.
This is when that point in time where everybody sits down, they pour the whiskey, dim the lights a bit. Right, let's get serious for a minute. This is it.
This is oh dear. So for me, and we're going back a wee bit, but it was not winning the European Cup in 1979, because we after we'd beaten Juventus and PSV Eindhoven, so we'd beaten a Juventus team that would most of which would go on and win the bloody World Cup. We played a PSV Eindhoven team and beat them, which contained a large element of the team that had got to the World Cup final with Holland. So they were absolute top seeds. So we've got to the last 8 in the European Cup, and here was the opposite. Here are the other 7 teams who were left in that competition: Nottingham Forest, Grasshoppers, Austria Vienna, Dynamo Dresden, Cologne, Wisla Krakow, and Malmo. That was the 7 teams we were up against to win the bloody thing. Obviously, we drew Cologne, and we lost 2-1 in aggregate. So we lost 1-0 across there, but we'd lost 1-0 in Juventus. So and come back and recovered it, and we didn't quite manage it. And here's my question of that tournament: who the fuck is Billy Urquhart?
No idea.
Well, Billy Urquhart would only ever played 14 games for Rangers. 2 of them were against Cologne. So we'd signed this guy from Granny's Heel and Hame somewhere after playing him in a pre-season friendly. He only ever played. He played 14 times. Billy Urquhart scored 6 goals, and on the away leg, Derek Perlane played up front, and Billy Urquhart then come on as a sub to replace him. And then the whole match, it was vice versa. It was Billy Urquhart who started, and then Derek Perlane come on to replace him. This was in a squad where we had Derek Johnson, who then come on as a defender in the return leg, rather than playing Derek Johnson up front. So clearly we were light up front. The fact that we had to go to, get someone from a farm outside Inverness to rely on him to get us past Cologne in the European Cup quarter-final. And half of that team had played in Barcelona in 72, so they'd been round the block. So they should have known what was required. And after having disposing Juventus and PSV Eindhoven, Cologne were well within our range. And then they obviously lost to Forest in the semi-final, and Forest went on to win it. But that for me was an absolute glorious opportunity to win the bloody thing. And we fluffed our lines in the quarter-final. We'd lost 1-0 in the first leg. And then bizarrely, when the return leg at Ibrox, the game was cancelled and it was then played the following evening because the ground was rock hard. And if you look at the footage of it, I think some of the players, the Rangers players, played in trainers that night because the ground was solid. So it wouldn't have been played today. On conditions like that. But we fucked that up. And you look at the teams that we were left in that competition with, and all of them were doable. All of them. So, and I honestly, I still just get a wee tinge of, what the fuck were we thinking about with Billy Urquhart?
I know, hindsight, and
Hey-ho.
It's how it could have turned out differently for John Greig as a manager. If we'd done things a wee bit differently in 1979.
Yeah, well, 79 was obviously a big year because John Greig was within one game of winning the treble. He got us to the quarter-final of the European Cup. So I know Greig's time is often seen as, a complete catastrophe. It was very far from that. It kind of ran out of steam. But, because after having the treble team, and in 79, we'd lost the game 4-2, and then we pumped them in the August, in the Driver Cup final. So, but the game against Cologne, we were so looking forward to that game. And I remember we were counting down the days, and you're thinking, because obviously there's the Mio Mio My song when the Rangers win the European Cup, we were playing that full tilt in the days before that game and then it got called off. But that was a big disappointment. I think we could have won it. We could have won it. Hey-ho.
Oh, hey-ho. What will be, yeah. So, on a happier note, you've mentioned a couple there. Question number 8. What's your favourite Rangers song? And keep this PG, don't get me shut down.
No, this one's been ethnically cleansed. No, my favourite song is a very recent one. It's on the first hearing of it is Every Saturday We Follow, and it's the Saint Phoenix version that boy's singing it. And I heard the song, and I thought that's cracking, that's brilliant. We'll be belting that out of iBooks. But then when I saw it with a video attached, that was it, and that's me. That's now my go-to song for the bath. When we get a good result, and I'm skipping around the house like a 4-year-old.
I tell you what, I totally get what you mean with the video attached as well. Obviously, last season, winning 55 was the Rangers media, social media and the media presentation team done an absolute sterling job, and it was stuff like this, releasing these songs and these videos attached, and it helps you feel a wee bit more connected even though you weren't at the stadium. It's very hard not to get goosebumps and not to get in a fire in your belly when you hear that song and when you watch a video that goes along with it.
Oh yeah, if that doesn't get your blood pumping, we'll have to check you for a pulse, because it's that does it for me. And particularly once you've seen the video and then that video's in your mind when you do sing it, it's cracking. Absolutely. I know it's it's only a couple of years old. But Every Saturday, it kind of sums it up. It's quite short, but those times they have been hard. So even a wee nod to the.
It's very fitting. It's very fitting. This song, and I think I hope this song stays for years to come, because it's an absolute belter. So, On to question number 9, Davie. We've had your biggest Rangers regret. So question number 9 is, if you could relive one Rangers moment, day or game in your lifetime, what would it be?
It was a toss-up between two. This is the one I kind of changed my mind on. Because
give me the two, then make a decision at the end.
Well, the first one that I'd come up with was December. It was December the 29th, 2018. Not very long ago, but obviously we were playing them, and we were getting closer. And Ryan Jack popped one in, and Rangers were brilliant that day. We saw them off. We should have scored more, but when we got to the second half, and we're getting closer and closer to the end, I actually didn't watch the last 10 minutes of that game. I couldn't. I was actually I was getting beyond help at that point, because I knew that we had to get over the hurdle of pumping them, and this was our day. So I actually had to extract myself, because I would have been apoplectic. You ever seen a grown man cry? Well, I would have been crying had that turned pear-shaped in the last 10 minutes, because we had played them off the park. And that was the moment that I knew we had them. As probably Gerrard did, and probably planned to do. But it was such a big day, such a huge moment for us. That was it. And it was the whole thing set off by the Andy Halliday tackle in the first few minutes, when he stands over Ntcham and pumping his fist, and we knew straight from the outset what was going to happen, and Rangers continued in that vein all the way, and we got the goal, and then by the second half, when it's getting 15 minutes to go, the beads of sweat are now on my forehead, and I'm thinking, I'll just so I just got off my seat and just went to the concourse, because had they popped one in, I swear to God, I think it would have been the end of me. But obviously we got the result, and it was that was a genuine euphoria. I mean, because on the road to 55, that was one of the milestones. It was a big milestone that we had to get over that wall, and we did. So we were delirious that night.
Ibrox was electric that day from start to finish. That was.
I think everyone could realise, what was at stake here. That was Brendan Rodgers' first defeat in 13 Old Firm games.
Wow. You mentioned there about milestones in the journey to 55, and I think in years to come, there'll be a nice wee maybe 5-10 steps to 55 that you could do on Steven Gerrard's time, and it would start with the first Europa League run qualifying, and then first time beating Celtic, blah blah blah. But that's for me, that was the first time we properly felt unified. There was that absolute connection and a unity between the fans, the players, the management, the club, and we were all up for that. And you just seen how much it meant to everybody. The first time seeing the players feel the same passion as the fans, that was huge.
Yeah, the reaction at the end told you, exactly how much it meant. Because normally you would win an important game, but there was that was a day when you would be hugging perfect strangers, because it was that's how big a moment it was. So it didn't matter who it was. If you knew they were a Rangers fan, they were in it with you, and we celebrated that together, because we knew it was a big moment, and it was just beautiful, because we had done it. We'd done it. My other contender, and this is going back some way, so we're going back to 29th of March 1975, and it was Easter Road, when we drew 1 each and we'd won the league for the first time that I'd ever known us to win the league. And it tells you something about, because obviously you're saying, those Easter House are wee street urchins. Well, here's proof positive, because I wasn't even 12 and I was at the game, and just on the train, with me and a couple of boys the same age as me, just down to the central Queen Street station, onto the football specials, off the Easter Road. Rangers fans were huge that day, and all the way to the ground. We just followed the crowd, just at Easter Road. And the official attendance that day is 38,585. But I hate my doubts about that, because it was absolutely rammed. And when I gone back and thinking about it, it was the same kind of reaction that day as to the game at Ibrox in 2018 when just the sheer relief. We hadn't won the league since 1964. So I think Kilmarnock had won it more recently than we had in 1975. So when Colin Stein scored the goal, I mean, the game itself, I don't remember too much about, because I know that they went 1-0 up. Sandy missed the penalty. But it was only minutes later when Colin Stein popped the winner in. And we had, I think, 25 minutes or something to wait for the final whistle. And then when the bits that are seared in my memory of that game are mostly after the match, when leaving the stadium, going all the way up Easter Road, because the Rangers crowd that day was, I mean, we had tens of thousands at Easter Road that day, tens of thousands. And it was just, we actually climbed up onto one of the bus stops on Easter Road so that we could see all the Rangers fans streaming round the corner and all the way up. And it was from wall to wall. It was scenes of untold joy, because we had eventually done it, and we'd waited a long time, because this was to stop them 10 last time. So if I could go back and just be a wee bit more appreciative of the carnival that it was, because all the way back to Waverley Station, on the trains, all the way back to Glasgow, that was it was a travelling circus. So that was good.
So I'm going to press you. What one would you pick if you could only pick one? 2018 or 1975?
I think I would have to go with 75, because it's obviously lots of that is in the darkest recesses of my mind, which I'll probably never be able to access again, having killed all those brain cells. So I would have to kind of refresh my memory by going back to do it again. It would be 1975.
Yeah, and extra special, as you say, the first time you remember your team winning the league, it always holds a dear place in your heart.
Because I'd never known it, because I mean I was one when the last time we'd done the treble in '64, obviously, which I was blissfully unaware of, but it must have been something similar to what the guys experienced last year who hadn't seen Rangers win the league. You know, so I was particularly pleased, you know, for the young team, because they had gone through that process where they probably thought we would never win it. We couldn't win it. That's what I thought. I remember when we'd eventually won it, so maybe we were just not allowed to win it, but eventually we did. And Yuppie Doodaddy went to the gala day. You know, when there was such a thing. The last game of the season was against Airdrie at Ibrox, when we had a gala day. Yippee, whatever that is, which meant they just had a whole lot of girls standing in the centre circle, you know, twirling sticks and things like that.
The Mongolian Army, were they there?
No, but listen, no. I don't know what happened. Someone fell down that day and didn't get them booked. But I think that would have made it a bit better. We'd rather have them than the girls with the twirling sticks, to be honest. Yeah. So that's number 9. You know, we're going back to 1975. Gosh, that was a while ago. 48 years ago.
So the 10th and final question, Davie. If you could go for a pint with one Rangers manager and one Rangers player, past or present, dead or alive, taking them in the wee Rangers club before a game, or just a quiet Sunday afternoon, have a pint with them, get their thoughts, shoot the shit, who would it be?
Well, there wasn't much of a debate over this one, to be honest. It's Super Ali and Walter Smith.
What a duel. What a duel.
So Ali's just a wee bit older than me. So we're kind of the same age. So when he was a boy, and I'm going to give you another cracking story here about Super Ali, which takes us back a wee while. Because when I told you I started as an apprentice joiner. So after I'd served my time, which was from 1979 to 1982, after that, me and one of the guys I served my time with, we went to London. So we were working in London. The job we were on was in Brewer Street in Soho. And on the job were a couple of guys from East Kilbride. It's Wally Murphy and Freddie Murphy. And if they're listening to this, then hi guys, long time no see. But they were at school with McCoist. So they're both from Calderwood and East Kilbride. And they were real big mates with Super Ali. So obviously by this time they now know I'm a Rangers fan. So, and they're saying, Davie, here's Ali's playing with Sunderland. They're playing Arsenal on Saturday. We're going to go to the game. Do you want to come with us? And I'm saying, that bastard, he's had 2 chances to sign for Rangers. See, when you see him, tell him he can fuck off. I mean, right? So, anyways, it turns out they both went to the game at Highbury on the Saturday. Sunderland were playing Arsenal. Can't even remember the score. But when they came in the following Monday and told me, he says that Ali took them into the players' lounge in Highbury after the game. So they met all the Arsenal players and they met all the Sunderland players and they were drinking for free. So I was like, bastard. So I was sick. So I almost got to meet. I mean, I have met Ali McCoist. I met him in Bennett's one night, which was a long time ago.
Is that why you're so fond of him?
Well, we used to get tickets when I was at uni, and we'd get tickets for the Thursday night, which apparently was the straight night, and that's my defence, right? So, and we went along because we would get the tickets for Hee Haw, and they would do kind of drinks promotions. But when we went along on the Thursday, McCoist was in there with Mark Walters and Stuart Monroe, so we had it was a kind of a couple of exchanges. Obviously, we didn't want to plague the guy, so I had a very brief exchange with him, but that was my chance to go have a few beers with him, which I told him to go and fuck off. So, because John Gregg famously said that, didn't he? He's had 2 chances to sign for Rangers, he'll never have a third, and then we did sign him from Sunderland. So, well, if I ever see Ali, I'll remind him of that story. And
don't tell me fuck off.
No, I'll apologise for that. I'll be gracious enough to say sorry, Ali. I misjudged you. So, that's pretty much it.
So Walter Smith, I think
Watty,
himself.
The only time I've ever spoke to Watty was again on another wee European adventure when we went down to Manchester when we played them in the Champions League. So we were on the Blues Brothers bus from the south side. I mean, I think it's Shawlands or something that. So we managed to get a couple of seats on their bus. We'd already arranged the tickets. So went down there and we stopped at Southway at one of those service stations. And we went into the service station and Walter was sitting there with a few guys. I think one was his son, but I don't know who the other guys were. So anyway, Walter's, they're just getting up to leave as we're coming in, and me being a dafty, I had to say something. So anyway, I said to Walter, do you think we've got a chance? And he just kind of looked at me with a kind of almost contempt and says, Rangers have always got a chance. And they just walked away from me. And I felt like tit.
That Walter Smith death stare in the person must have been terrifying.
Because, well, do you think we've got a chance, Walter? Rangers have always got a chance, and walked away from me. And I thought, maybe I should have said something else. Would you like another coffee, Walter? So that was my one and only exchange with Walter Smith. But he was on his way down to the game, obviously. And I think Fergie let us off the hook that night. We got cuffed 3-0, and Van Nistelrooy had scored a couple, and I think they were about 3-0 up. Gosh, it was early doors. If it wasn't in the first half, it was very early in the second. He then just started making substitutions. I think he let us off the hook because they would have pulverised us that night had they put their mind to it.
Aye.
So, But at Old Trafford, I wasn't that impressed with Old Trafford as a stadium. It says kind of Meccano-ish.
I just love the fact that you can get a pint at the game. That's fucking alien to me, obviously. I've never known otherwise, but nah, I know what you mean. So you'd finishing off there, you'd be going out for a pint to talk about all your stories, your time following Rangers with Super Ali and Sir Walter Smith. It's a good night out there.
Oh, it would be, yeah, that'd have been nice, yeah. Aye. I mean, could you imagine McCoy and Super, what the tales they could tell you? Do you know what? I'd want to ask them about the 9 in a row, who were the dafties, and just give me some of the background stories and all the antics you get into. Well.
So, Davie, 10 questions done and dusted. How was that?
Cathartic for me, because there's Colin. To be honest, we should do a programme in the game into Dublin, because that was some day out. I can assure you. Well, it wasn't. It was more than a day out, because after the game in Dublin, we went to Belfast and we went to the Linfield Shamrock Rovers game in the European Cup the following night. So we had a tour, and Dublin was nuts. That's why, and I now know, if I have first-hand experience, why Rangers will never be back in Dublin, because that's the closest I've been to a war zone in my life. It was.
So we'll not spoil the listeners too much, because I know Chris Paul does have something lined up where we're going to have a show dedicated to European away trips and experiences. Just on Dublin, some of the listeners don't know, my partner lives in Dublin, so I'm back and forth to Dublin every couple of weeks, and one of my first times out with the locals and folks she works with, I thought I was being funny, and instead of saying how long you lived in Dublin for, I said, how long have you lived in West Britain? And that sank like a lead fucking balloon, Davie.
Aye. Remember, Jimmy Carr, is the comedian's name?
Yep.
When he was in a concert in Dublin, and his opening line was, I think Ireland should be unified. When he got a big cheer, and then he says, under British rule. And we got a big groan for that one.
Well, in that note, Davie has been, and I'm not just saying this, I said it to you before we started recording, I was genuinely looking forward to this, and you didn't disappoint. Thank you for telling me all your tales of following Rangers.
No problem, Colin. Thank you for listening to all my nonsense. It was it's good fun and good fun recollecting some of the madness. I mean, there's loads of other stuff, as you said. We could do programs and individual trips for some of the carry-ons. PSG, I mean, don't get me started on that.
So, and a massive thank you to all the listeners as always, and just a call to arms. We've all got our stories and all got our memories and the moments that mean something to us. If you want to come on and talk about your time following Rangers, answer these 10 questions, we'd love to have you on. It doesn't matter if you're part of a young team and 55 was your first title, or if you're like Davie and you're fairly long in the tooth following Rangers, get in touch. We'll get you on. We'd love to hear from you. That's all from us. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, and we are the people.